Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. Actually, I can't see you, but you can see me. Welcome to another program of It Has Nothing to Do with Age or Gender. The book is It Has Nothing to Do with Age. Today, my guest, Tony, is still on vacation, and he'll be back soon. In any event, my first guest for today, and the only guest for today, is Keith Nesbitt. And I'm going to introduce him. And in introducing him, this show will be probably a little bit different than some of the other shows that we've had, but you'll see, and hopefully you'll enjoy this as well. Keith, the theme of the show is that it's really about mental toughness. And I start off with a quote. I'd like to present a quote to you, and if you'll respond to it and how it relates to your life.
All right.
And the quote is by Thule Kupferberg. When patterns are broken, new worlds emerge. When patterns are broken, new worlds emerge. How might that relate to you?
Thinking outside of the box, probably a little bit. Not being afraid to introduce new ideas or sort of break up the status quo, maybe.
Okay. And can you give us an example of a new idea?
I can give you a great example of a new idea. It was a great lead-in, a great segue, by the way. One of the new ideas that we've been working on in Auburn for the past year or so is this new adventure destination. And we've made arrangements with the federal, state governments and the park land to have more events in the canyon. We had, a few weeks ago, we had an event where we had the duck derby and a canyon float, and actually some base jumping from the Forest Hill Bridge to try to draw some attention to some of the future events that we're going to be doing in the canyon. And since we've been the self-proclaimed endurance capital of the world, and we have a lot of endurance events that come through the canyon, about a year and a half ago I had this concept of a decathlon or a triathlon, Auburn style, and how we might capitalize on all of the endurance events that happen in the area. We have road bike races, we have mountain bike races, we have the Tevis Cup, the 100-mile horse race, we have the Western States 100-mile run. Brad Kearns has his triathlon, used to be called the world's toughest half. One year, I believe that was one of the qualifying events for the Olympics. So we have all these endurance sports, and they all center around what's going on in the canyon. So I started to formulate an idea about an event that would try to draw most of these activities that we do together, and I termed it the Krazy Man. And so,
well, let's stop it for the moment.
Yeah.
And so why would you call something like this the Krazy Man?
The original concept was an idea where we would have bicycle riding, running, swimming, and by bicycle riding, both road bike and mountain bike, horseback riding, mountain climbing, kayaking. And when I first came out with the idea, people said, well, you could probably find some crazy people that would want to do all those events. And so I sort of nicknamed it the Krazy Man, and later on we changed the C to a K because we're trying to get a website going on it. Since then we've toned down the event a little bit for the first year, but we're hoping we can eventually grow into that decathlon type of concept. But I think it's just to draw attention to the ultra athletes that want to be the Krazy Man. We have the Iron Man, and we didn't want to copy that, and so.
So are you suggesting that people who do these ultra events are crazy?
In their own way. I mean, we're all crazy in our own way, but no, it's poking a little fun at them, you might say. But no, it was a takeoff on the Iron Man, and we just we just wanted to do something different. The Krazy Man idea was mine, and I said change the name if we wanted to. We talked to some of the people in the Endurance Capital Committee, some of the runners, the city manager. Started out with chatting with people that were on the executive committee and the steering committee of the Amgen when we brought the Tour of California here, and they sort of liked the idea of the Krazy Man. And the idea was maybe at the end of the event we could have some sort of a ceremony to, you know, similar to the Burning Man or whatever, and really make a fun festivity out of it. The other part of the equation was drawing people into the town for more than just an afternoon or a morning, and having a two-day event so we could bring some, not just some world-class athletes, but also teams. And so our appeal was we could appeal to the corporate structure, to companies where one guy might be a horseback rider, one guy might be an avid bike rider, a swimmer, and a runner. They could actually do this as a team. But we also knew that there would be those ultra athletes out there that would want to say, I want to do all the events, I want to be the Krazy Man.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So is there going to be like a Krazy Man award?
There is going to be a Krazy Man award. We're still in the embryonic stages of the development. We met this morning with a few people from the steering committee, and a matter, if I may, this is perfect timing. We're going to start probably within the next few weeks. We're going to have a contest for the artists, high school students, and professional artists, to come up with a concept or of a design of the Krazy Man, and we will probably scan them, put them on a website, let people vote on them, take maybe the top 5 or 10, and then judge them as to what the best logo is for the Krazy Man.
Okay.
And of course we'd have awards for maybe the People's Choice. And it's kind of an advanced marketing way to have everybody sort of get into this idea of the Krazy Man. And then once we have that logo or that concept of the Krazy Man, there would just be posters. He would just start appearing at different events in town, and with just he's coming next summer, and sort of teasing the audience and the surrounding communities, and starting to get a little bit of a frenzy whipped up for the event, if I may.
So it sounds like Wendell Roby would like this idea.
I think the forefathers of the Western states and the Tevis Cup would smile on the idea.
Yeah, because this is bringing people to Auburn. That was the idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And my big focus on this was having an event that you really couldn't do everything in a day, so people would be here for a weekend.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I know you have a background in running. Correct. In high school.
Correct.
Could you tell us a little bit about your running background?
It's kind of funny. When I was very young, I was about.
When you're very young, you're not young now?
Yeah, well, not nearly as young as I used to be.
Okay.
When I was very young, about 2 years old, I was diagnosed with non-paralytic polio. My parents noticed that I'd try to walk and I'd trip over myself. I really didn't have the muscle tone. So I had to do a lot of stretching and a lot of working with my legs to try to get them into shape. And so at some point in about 5th, 6th grade, junior high, I realized, and I was pretty slender, I realized that I was a pretty good runner, and not just a fast runner, but a distance runner.
Mm-hmm.
I had the endurance to run long distances. When I was in the 8th grade, we used to have this cross-country mile. And I would take off, we'd run a half a lap and run around the edge of the school and back and run another half lap to finish it. And I would be so far ahead of the rest of the class
mm-hmm.
by the time I got to the last half lap that I'd turn around and run it backwards.
Was that in this area?
This was in Santa Rosa. I grew up in
Santa Rosa. Okay.
So the high school coach at that point, Jim Underhill, came to the junior high one day, and I guess the coach must have told him, you got to see this kid showing off and running backwards. So he came out and he said, you're going to play some sports in high school? I said, well, I don't, baseball or football, I'm not sure. And he goes, no. You're going to be a cross-country runner. And so my freshman year, my best friend and I actually tied. We broke the freshman record. And later on that year, I actually had an accident and found out that I had a dead kidney and had a kidney removed. So that kind of set me back for a little while. But in my senior year, I ended up being the best distance runner in my school.
Oh, great. How were your parents involved in your running with you?
Just encouraging me. I think, you know, in my young age, working with me a lot, I can remember, you know, very young age when my parents stretching my legs, you know, laying flat on the table, you know, until I was almost in tears. And just, you know, they just every night they'd say, we have to do this. You know, we want you to have a normal life and be able to run and play. And so they worked with me a lot when I was younger. In my older age, they just supported me. My mother would make desiccated liver or whatever on days when I had meets, because that was supposed to give you endurance. I think they discovered that, the track team in UCLA discovered that in the late 60s, so the coach would always suggest that. So they were very supportive of my athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you remember what they said to you, the specifics?
Not necessarily, just go out and win.
Okay. Were they involved in sports in their upbringing, do you know?
My parents had an interesting upbringing. They were both raised on farms and ranches in the 30s and 40s in New York. They lived about 15 or 20 miles away from each other in New York, and they met at a skating rink in Southern California.
Okay.
My mother's parents had moved,
Was this roller skating or ice skating?
roller skating.
Roller
rink,
skating,
yeah.
okay.
So my mother's parents had moved from New York in the Syracuse area, and they had moved to Southern California, where my grandfather started a construction company, and my father was stationed at March Air Force Base, and his family was from Rochester, Moravia, in that area of New York. So they met there. So I don't know if they had a lot of time for athletics, because my mother worked on a chicken ranch. My father quit school when he was 15 because his brothers were in World War II, and 2 of them had been wounded. His father had been wounded in World War I, and so he quit school at 15 to basically run the farm. So I don't think they had a lot
Was
of
the
time.
farm in
New York.
Farm in New York, okay. So they came to California later?
Correct, yeah. So they settled in Southern California, and eventually we moved around California, and eventually I grew up in Santa Rosa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that where you were born?
I was born in Riverside.
Oh, okay.
Riverside, California.
Okay.
So we lived in the Riverside, San Bernardino area. We were talking about sports earlier.
Yes.
My grandfather actually threw out the first ball at a Dodger game in either 61 or 62. And he gave me that ball before he died. And so I have a baseball signed by Colfax and Drysdale and Pee Wee Reese and all
How
those
did he
guys.
get that honor?
He was best friends with the mayor of San Bernardino, and they had a special day honoring San Bernardino, and there was some emergency with the mayor, and he called my grandfather and said, "Warren, I can't make it today. Can you go and throw out the first ball for me?" So I guess there was 2 balls that were signed, and my cousin who lives in Stockton has one, and I have the other one.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
That is terrific. Only 2 of a kind.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure everyone that threw out the ball got it signed, but as far as we're concerned, they're 2 of a kind.
That's neat. Yeah. So there is a sports connection going back. Especially
always loved sports. Yeah, I can remember sitting at the Colorado River listening to Vince Scully on my transistor radio, and that's how long Vince.
So you're a Dodger. You're a Dodger.
I was.
You were a Dodger.
I was.
Fan.
I moved to Northern California. Slowly and methodically, they converted. I was really more of an A's fan when I was growing up, but they slowly converted
Even
me
in
to
Southern California?
No, once I moved north.
Okay.
So I was really an A's fan growing up, but I converted to being a Giants fan, in the early 80s. And in 1985, I moved back to Huntington Beach. So now I'm in Dodger and Angel country, and I'm a Giants fan. So I was really a fish out of water for a lot of my sports career.
All right. Now the Raiders would go to Santa Rosa for.
Correct.
Did you?
I was in one of my favorite little dancing places one night called the Music Box, and it was very crowded, and we were standing towards the back of the room, and I got bumped and spilled half my drink, and I turned around, this guy said, "Sorry, man," and it was Ken Stabler. So yeah, my sister and her boyfriend at the time knew some of the Raiders, so they would regularly at the El Rancho Tropicana, they would regularly sit around and chat with Al Davis and guys, and so yeah.
Okay.
So always loved sports. I was a baseball fan when I was younger, obviously more of a football fan now, and since my son played football at Placer, that we watch football together. That's really our sport.
Well, tell us about your son.
He played football at Placer all 4 years. He wasn't a starter, but he started out as a the center, when he was a freshman, and his junior and senior year, he went to defense and played defensive end. He was backup defensive end, but it was very good for him. He lost his mother when he was 13. It didn't really like school, was sort of struggling in school, so that camaraderie and that discipline on that football team, I think, helped get him back involved. He was, you know, he was a C student and he ended up being a B student. Didn't get into a lot of trouble because all they do is practice, and it was very good for him. It built a lot of character, and his football buddies are really still his best friends.
Well, tell us about your bonding experience with the your track team.
Cross country, the distance runners. I was a distance runner, so in track, you have the pole vaulters and you have the sprinters, and you all know everybody on the team, but in the fall we ran cross country, so everyone on the team was a distance runner. A lot of them were the skinnier kids that, you know, weren't beefy enough to play football, and they found out, you know, I'm still an athlete because I can run and I have endurance. So we all shared that common experience. We were all endurance runners. It was a team sport, but it was also an individual sport. You wanted to win the race, and you wanted to be the top runner in the area, but even if you weren't, you wanted to do the best that you could so that your team would score well. And my senior year, the first 4 guys, you have a 7-man team in cross country, the top 4 guys, we were all best friends. And to this day, 2 or 3 of them are still my best friends. So. And I think that goes with a lot of sports. I think the people that you strive with, that you suffer the agony of defeat and the thrill of victory, if I can steal that term, that is a real bond for people. That's really experience. That's real adventures that you've gone through in your sports years. And what I've found is a lot of people. Back in my high school, when we go to reunions or whatever, the football players are still hanging around with each other.
Yes.
And the guys that ran cross country are still hanging around each other. There's a bond that forms. High school and intramural sports are so important, and I hope we can retain all those sports in school. It's so important to your development and your character.
You think most people understand that?
People that are involved in sports do.
What about non-sports people?
I hope so. I think a lot of people understand it. If you haven't had a corresponding experience, it's harder for you to understand. And there's a lot of other corresponding experiences. The kids that were in drama class that performed plays together, we're all still best friends. I think if you have a corresponding experience where you've given a lot of yourself, where you put a lot of yourself into it, and you have a comrade that's doing the same, and you become brothers or sisters in arms, that stays with you.
Okay. So you're hoping that with all the budget cuts and things that are going on, that sports, athletics, physical fitness is not cut?
You know, it can't be cut. My real concern about elementary through high school now is sort of the rapid succession, one class to another, shorter lunches. We don't want to lose that camaraderie and the social aspect of school. And sports for me was part of the social aspect because my teammates were my good friends. But sports builds character. Giving more of yourself, you know, if you're running or you're playing football and you don't think you can do any more and you push yourself to go that much further, that builds character. And those kind of characters, they roll over into your later life, and you understand that you don't quit.
Yeah, that's what mental toughness is partly about, which is continuing to push regardless of the circumstance. Of course, there can be a limit. One can do something that's harmful to themselves, but more or less is pushing themselves. I was telling Keith before the show, I was interviewing Tom Darden, who played professional football for the Cleveland Browns, that what he learned, one of the basic learnings that he learned, he said, is to continue the persistence. Same thing what you're saying. Basically is to, if you get knocked down, you get up. And you do learn that in sports, is that because you generally don't always win unless maybe you're Michael Phelps or somebody like that. But basically, you push, and it's through the discipline, it's through the training, and of course the camaraderie is so important. So I certainly agree with you. All right, so you have the background in cross country as opposed to track, because there's track and field, and
I did track and field too, but cross country was more geared to the distance runner. Yeah.
That's really what you prefer as opposed to track. Okay, so with the Krazy Man with a K, what running event or events have you thought about incorporating at this particular point, if you've gone that far?
Yeah, no, we have. The way the concept is set up right now, that it will be a Saturday and a Sunday event. On Saturday, we would start out with a swim, maybe in Lake Clementine, maybe at Rattlesnake Bar, leaning towards Lake Clementine. A mile swim, kind of like a triathlon. And then we would have a road bike race. The road bike race would come from the end of the swim, down into the canyon, back up into town, and at that point it would turn into a criterium. So they would do several laps around town so that the spectators in town could see the bike.
On the road bike?
Yeah, on the road bike. Then they would surrender the road bike for a run, and the way I envision the run now is probably similar to, or maybe the exact same run that Brad Kearns used in his triathlon. He's already got that route established. So that would be the end of the day on Saturday. On Sunday, we would start from town. There would be a mountain bike race, and the mountain bike race would be going through the canyon and up towards Michigan Bluff, where the bikes would be turned in, and the final event would be a horse race from there back into town. So a little bit of the Tevis Cup and a little bit of the cool mountain bike race, so blending some of the events that already happen in the canyon.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back. So roughly we're talking about a swim, maybe a mile, mile swim. And would there be any criteria to enter the swim? Have you thought about that?
As far as
participants?
No, we haven't really got that far along. I think, our initial concept would be that we would limit the number of contestants.
Any ideas this point?
Oh, tough to say. They just had the Ironman or triathlon. I'm sorry, there was a little lizard crawling across the floor. It caught my attention for a second.
Okay.
They had a sort of an ultra Ironman where they did a 2.4 mile swim and a 120 mile bike ride and a full marathon. So they had about 2,300 people, and about 15% of them really didn't even show up. And so I think they had about 1,500 to 1,700 actually finish. That's a pretty large crowd, so we haven't really got to that detail, but I would say we'd try to limit it to 1,000 or 1,500 participants. Now, I say that with a grain of salt. Because of the type of event, I suspect that most of the entrants will be a team. So we would approach corporate America, REIs, sports-related businesses, and like I said, our corporations, where one person might be an avid horseback rider, and one person might be an avid bike rider, one person might be a runner. So they would actually have like a team. They'd kind of pass the baton. But what we're hoping for is there would be some elite athletes that would say, I want to do all 5 events. I want to be the Krazy Man. So we haven't really got that far, but I would say we scaled it down to this sort of decathlon from more events, because logistics.
Are you fixed on 5?
We're fixed on 5 for the first year. We would like to grow this eventually to maybe having mountain climbing, kayaking, or whatever. But we're trying to have a pretty good event without getting too crazy, if you will, the first year. So, and then from there, obviously, at some point in time, if we draw enough of a crowd and it becomes a popular event, we'd really like to have some sort of a corporate sponsor take on a lot of the responsibility for the event. This could be the Red Bull Krazy Man, or the REI Krazy Man, or whatever. So I think our concept the first year is to keep it manageable, but still have enough events to where it's different from just a road bike race or just a horse race.
So who would fund it the first year?
Who would fund it?
Yeah.
Well, I think probably we would get sponsors for the event. We would have an entry fee from the athletes. Sponsorships mostly. The city has kicked in a little bit of seed money for marketing to start up the event because the Economic Development Commission, it is an event that's designed to bring people into the area, introduce them into the area. And that's the other thing that we hope, that we can bring enough people with this kind of event that don't regularly visit the area, that they'll look at the area and the canyon and the wineries and the restaurants and the character of the town and want to come back. Whether there's a race or an athletic event or not. So a little bit of seed money from the city, and similar to the Amgen Tour of California, we had a little bit of seed money from the city. We actually paid the city back and ended up with an excess of funds after that event. But there were a lot of volunteers that worked very hard, and we had a lot of sponsors. And so following sort of that Amgen model is where we are right now.
Were you involved in the Amgen model?
I was heavily involved in the Amgen. I co-produced the video proposal
Okay.
that brought us the tour with Bruce and Brian Roop. And once we got the stage start, I was on the executive committee and the board, and I was on the executive committee of Bike Auburn. So very, very heavily involved in that effort.
Okay. So the swim might be a mile, give or take, and the road bike, what would roughly the distance of that be? Do you have...
It would depend on how many laps we can do through town. So we have some other logistics too, because we're going to try to do this the same weekend as the Black and White Affair. And hopefully, and we've talked to Bruce Cosgrove in the chamber, they like the idea of sort of doing a cooperative crossover on the marketing. And so that's why not 5 events one day. We have 3 events one day, come to the ball, have a fun time, get up in the morning, do the other 2 events. We'll have a little party with the Krazy Man party, burning a Krazy Man, or just having some sort of a barbecue or whatever at the end of the event. But so we're
So you're
not really
sure.
I'm guessing that we'll have a bike race that's 20-25 miles maybe into town, and then enough routes around town. So if I had to say right now, we'd be a 25 to 40 mile bike race, a 1 mile swim, 12 to 13 mile run, and then the next day the mountain bike race.
Well, let's just stick with the first day first, on Saturday.
Right.
So then the run would be a trail run.
Correct.
And that would roughly be from...
The way we envision it now would be that the bike race would start from wherever the swim, go through the canyon, you know, maybe make a route around that. So they've got several miles before they get into town. Do several laps around town like a criterium.
And
probably end up at the Overlook, where it would be a staging place where the run would start. The run would go down into the canyon and come back and finish either at the Overlook or at the stadium at Placer High, something like that.
Okay. Roughly the mileage for the run?
I would say 12 to 13 miles for the run.
Okay, so maybe a half marathon.
Yeah, a half marathon, a 5K or a 10K at least.
Okay. So anywhere from a 5 to 10K to a half marathon?
Correct.
Okay. Well, yeah, so if you're doing, even if you went from the Overlook to No Hands Bridge and back, you're talking roughly 8 miles. So it'd be hard to get in a 5K.
Yeah.
Unless you did one little loop.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Like I said, we're still sort of working out the
understand.
details of that. We've got the concept nailed down, and figuring out the strategy and the logistics is what we're working on now.
And roughly what time would this start, are you thinking?
Well, I would think that we would probably start the swim fairly early in the morning, 7-ish, 8 o'clock, something like that.
Okay.
We'd like to get the first day's event over by early to mid-afternoon, so the people, the athletes or the spectators would have time to rest up and hopefully come to the Black and White Affair later on.
Okay, so roughly by mid-afternoon. And then they'd go to the Black and White if they wanted. Okay. Okay, and then Sunday, you talked about a mountain bike. What time would roughly that start?
I would imagine that would be the same thing. We would start in the morning, and the same thing with going up to somewhere near Michigan Bluff and riding back probably a good, 5 to 6 hours. So again, ending somewhere early afternoon, and then having, what we'd really like to do is have some sort of a barbecue or festivity at the end, give whatever awards we're going to give, and still have people be able to get back on the road to wherever they're going to by late afternoon, so that we're not, people aren't trying to drive home at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night after doing all these athletic events all weekend.
So if it started somewhere here to Michigan Bluff, the mountain bike, and what's your mile? Is it on? You think of the same trail as the?
Yeah.
As the
Tom
Tevis?
Christoph was the one that gave us the idea of where we could probably stage this, and so he would be better to ask about the exact mileage on that.
Okay. Well, just roughly getting some idea. All right, and then drop off the bike and then get on the horse.
Correct.
And come back here. Okay. So what might be the fees or the entrance for this?
Haven't established that. We wouldn't want to get we wouldn't want to make them too onerous, because the first year we want to draw a good crowd. Hopefully they would be minimal, because by that time hopefully we've gathered enough sponsors to really debt service the event.
Okay. So if somebody was to do the Krazy Man at the beginning, aside from one's running shoes, they'd have to have a road bike, mountain bike, and a horse.
Correct.
Well, I know a couple of people that have that.
So do I.
So that's a possibility.
I think if you look at the eppies that they do down in the Sacramento area, I envision most of the people really doing it as a team. You know, and there maybe the bicyclist would do both the road and the mountain bike, but there's people that like to swim, there's people that like to run, there's people that like to ride horses. We suspect most of the participants would be doing it in a team sport, so we would have an award obviously for the team that would have the highest score, finish first. But we know, and we're hoping, that there will be enough sort of elite athletes that I want to do every event, I want to be the Krazy Man.
Okay. So would there be any limit as to the number of members of the team?
Well,
have you thought about that?
5 people would be the maximum, because there's 5 events.
So anywhere from 1 to 5 then?
Exactly.
Okay. And so once again, let's talk a little bit about the marketing of this and your thoughts about that.
Well, like I said, it's still in the embryonic stages.
Are you doing any marketing now?
No, the initial marketing, the first part of the marketing campaign is coming in the next week or so, where we're going to come out with flyers and invite just the local artists in the community to design the Krazy Man. And people will obviously, well, what's the Krazy Man? We'll introduce them to the idea, and that'll be our initial marketing to the local area. Okay,
to the schools,
the high schools, and the professional artists as well.
Okay.
So, we chatted about this morning. We had a meeting with the steering committee, and you know, we would probably have a grand prize somewhere in the area of like $500. Very much worth your time to really try it, put some thought into it, and then maybe have a People's Choice, or maybe have an awards for the best high school entrance or whatever. That's still evolving too. We have some people working on that part of the marketing.
Okay.
So that's going to be our initial marketing phase. I would say towards the end of the year, November, December, we'll really start figuring out the sponsorship marketing type of opportunities. And towards the first of the year, very heavy into the logistics. John Ruffcorn will really be working with the multi-jurisdictional agencies to close off certain roads at certain time coming through the canyon and such. So there'll be a lot of coordination in that, and the logistics of having some of the experts, you know, the bike experts and the running experts, sort of take their specialties and sort of run with it, you know, take ownership of that. And we're going to be approaching a meeting with the Endurance Capital Committee here soon, and I'm hoping that they'll take at least partial ownership of that, along with the steering committee that's already been formed. So sort of meld that Amgen Bike Auburn committee with the Endurance Capital Committee, because this really is the Endurance Capital. It's all about endurance sports. It's a sort of a condensed version of all the endurance sports, but it has them all in one.
And when would this take place?
What's that? The race will take place next September.
September.
In conjunction with the Black and White affair.
And when is the Black and White going to be next?
It will be probably the second either the second or third week in September.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like you've done a lot and have a lot left.
We have a great deal left to do. We've formulated the concept. We've sort of drawn our limitations on the events. Like I said, the first go around, we were going to have kayaking, and the logistics of that. The first year, we said let's do something that's got more events than any single event that's taking place now, but let's do something that we think is manageable. So that's where we sort of honed it down to this kind of decathlon.
Okay, so let's say there are some people who are watching who are interested in becoming involved. What should they do?
Contact myself.
Okay.
I'd say they can contact me at the city. They can go to the city website and click on the council members, and they can email me. They can call me. Call me on my cell, 530-320-2325. Or contact John Ruffcorn. Manoush from the ARD is involved. Roger Lubkeman, my appointee to the Planning Commission, is involved. Elizabeth Sands. A few of those people, I won't say a lot, a few of those people from the Amgen Steering Committee are part of the concept steering committee, I'll say.
Okay. Okay. All right, so that would be good. Just really contact you.
Yes.
Okay, so is this going to be a job?
No.
What would you call this?
I would call this another one of my harebrained ideas that I hope I can get a lot of other good people to buy into.
You've had others?
Oh, many.
Like what else?
Interestingly enough, the Streetscape project, not in its present form, was a vision of mine 15, 16 years ago. The streets were buckled. We had some bad sidewalks, and I had chatted with some council members at the time and said, what about getting the service clubs together and having them replace sections of the sidewalk, and they could honor somebody that's in their club or somebody that's involved in the history of Auburn, put a plaque or whatever in the sidewalk while they had it. But so when the city manager first came into town, I was chairman of the Planning Commission. I wasn't even on the council yet. And so he had talked to me. He goes, well, I'm sort of new. I'm getting this concept. How do we get this old town and downtown area together? And I said, I'm not sure if we can psychologically link them without really physically linking them. And I said, we've got this area in Midtown that we need to do something with. We need to enhance that, and we need to create something that makes people want to walk that extra block one way or another, so it seems like our two historic districts are more contiguous. And in those discussions, Bob Richardson, of course, took it and ran with it and deserves most of the credit for it. But in those discussions were the embryonic stages of the streetscape.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So not necessarily harebrained.
Yeah.
An idea.
No, yeah.
Okay, what else?
Shoot, put me on the spot now. I probably have 100 of them I'll think about in 10 minutes when we're off the air. One of the things we did when I first got on the council was...
when was that, Bill?
Keith.
Keith, rather.
Yeah.
I was thinking, when did you get on the council, Keith?
First got on the council, I was elected in 2004, and one of the things I ran on was trying to make this a more walkable community. And one of the things I fostered, and Councilman, now Mayor Hanley, partnered up with me, was this, we formed a pedestrian master plan committee where we actually surveyed all the sidewalks in town. And we developed a list of priorities of what we really needed to do. And at the time, it was fix a lot of the buckling sidewalks in the old town, downtown, midtown area, but more routes to schools. We didn't have good sidewalks to a lot of our schools. Since then, that's happened. But in the process of being on the Planning Commission, at a Sierra Business Council conference, they really talked about how you make a more walkable community. And one of the things that I noticed through town of most of our boulevards is the street, the sidewalk, and then trees. And it's really the opposite of the way it should be, because it's not comfortable to walk along a heavily traveled street 5 feet from a car that's going 40 miles an hour. So Councilman Hanley and I went through the process, and we actually ended up passing kind of a new ordinance and general plan where future large developments would have some sort of sidewalk separation, where there would be a landscape strip where you could put trees that would make the walk shady, encourage people to walk and make the walk feel safer and more serene, because you're 10 feet from the path of travel with bushes or a tree or something between you and the car. And so that was kind of one of my initial ideas that I brought from the Planning Commission to the council.
Okay. What else?
I know you put me on the spot. One of the ideas I came up with, and we haven't really gone a lot further with it, was to create a canyon rim trail along the rim of the canyon. And the concept there was people that use that trail would have a vested interest in helping us keep the shaded fuel break. The trail hasn't happened, but the shaded fuel break, and people have gone to work on that. So half of that concept kind of took hold, but that concept really took hold with the efforts of the Fire Safe Council, Mayor Hanley really leading the charge on that.
Okay. And when did you move up to this area?
I moved to Auburn in 1990.
Because?
My sister had lived up in the Lake of the Pines area.
All right.
We came to visit her a lot. I lived in Huntington Beach at the time. Understand, I grew up in Northern California where there was a lot more wilderness, and we went to the river and we went to the mountains. And
then the ocean.
I love the ocean, but I got tired of sharing my life with 14 million other people, all of whom seem to be driving the same direction on the 405 freeway at Friday at 4:15.
Notorious.
And so every time I visited my sister for Christmas or whatever, I came back to the concrete jungle, and my girlfriend at the time, who ended up being my wife, I said, I think I need to move back north. I like that area. I never thought I'd move anywhere near Sacramento, but I really like that foothill area, the gold rush towns. I like the charm. You know, I think that's where I want to dig in. And so we bought a little fixer house, and then we built another house later on. It's where my son was born. My wife passed away 6 years ago, so we've dug in. This has really been where life has happened for me. It's where I got married. It's where I started a family. I dug into the community. I got involved, and in 2000 I ran for the council. I placed dead last. I stole the line from Dennis Miller. I said, I got stomped like a narc at a biker rally. I placed dead last, but they appointed me to the Economic Development Commission. In 2002, I thought about running for the council. I actually pulled papers, but I was pretty busy that year. I was running a fundraiser for my Rotary Club, and I was doing a fundraiser and a project for the Salvation Army, their refrigeration unit where they store all their meat now. So I was pretty involved in that, and there really wasn't much more time to steal from my family. So I decided not to run and actually supported Hanley and Holmes and Alice Dowden in that race. Subsequently, Mike Holmes appointed me to the Planning Commission, so I chaired the Planning Commission from 2000 to 2000, or from 2002 to 2004, and then was elected to the council in 2004.
Okay.
So, and prior to that, I'd been on the board of directors at the chamber or whatever. It's really hard if you're a doer to be in this town and not be involved. And I think that's why this town is so special. There's so many volunteers, there's so many people that really have taken ownership of this town, and that's why it's such a special place to live.
Okay. So you're really heavily involved in government for quite a while.
Yeah.
Where do you see your career going from here?
Not sure. This will probably be my last term on the council. It may not be my last term as an elected official, and
Why might this be the last term on the council?
It will be 12 years, and I think, at some point in time you have to make way. You have to be able to turn over the baby at some point. We have a lot of good people on the Planning Commission, a lot of people involved in committees in the chamber that are very good leaders, and at some point in time I think you step aside you've done your job, you've done it well, you step aside for some fresh blood. And I don't want to ever get to a point where I'm complacent, and I think because I've been there 12 or because I've been there 16 years that somehow my vote counts for any more than anybody else on the council. I believe whether you were elected 2 weeks ago or you've served there 10 years, your vote and the other vote are just as important. You're 1 vote out of 5 no matter what.
Okay. So let's say you're talking to somebody from Southern California, and that you're going to sell this area, what might your speech be?
Well, you start with above the fog and below the snow, right? Standard park-like setting. If you're a realtor, it's park-like setting. If you're a politician, it's above the fog, below the snow. I think I would sell them on my experience. I think I would give them my experience and what happens when you embrace a village and you become part of it, and the charm of the town, the fact that we have a lot of great restaurants and eating facilities that aren't necessarily all chains. We have the canyon, we have vineyards.
What would you say about the canyon? I mean, how would you paint a picture of the canyon?
I think the scenery, the type of endurance events, the fishing, the hiking, the fact that right in your backyard, I mean, just literally just steps away, you have some of the most breathtaking views. You have just about everything that nature can offer right there on your doorstep. And you have a town with great people and charm, and there's so many testimonials. My girlfriend, my significant other, Kelly now, she used to just pass through Auburn, stop here on her way to Tahoe or whatever. She lived in South Placer and all over the Sacramento area. Once she started really getting involved and going to Rotary events and going to events in town, she's just, this is a great place. So I would tell people, come and stay and experience it. If you really get to know this town, you'll fall in love with it. Once you fall in love with it, you might not want to leave.
And how would a newcomer, what would you suggest a newcomer do?
Get involved. One of the best ways to get involved, I think, when I first started meeting people, I started going to chamber mixers, the mixers that they have, mixers after hours once a month, and I think the first 2 or 3 I went and I said hi and nice to see you to a few, everybody there. After about the 3rd one, I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to get to know 1 or 2 people. I'm going to go to every mixer I can for the next 2 or 3 years, and I'm going to get to know. I'm going to have a relationship instead of just shake your hand, try to remember what that guy's name was.
Mm-hmm.
And I did
so
that.
Actually talk to somebody.
Yeah, actually talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And I did before, and you have a cocktail and you tell stories and you laugh and you get to know people as people. And a few years later, I went to a chamber mixer and I was late. I walked in and everyone, there he is. And I realized that I knew everyone in the room. But it started with, it's a slow, I would tell people, get involved, and you can go gangbusters or you can do that slow, methodical approach where you meet key people one at a time. But the best way to assimilate yourself into town is to volunteer. And you'll find that it's contagious. You'll want to volunteer for more things. The chamber has a lot of opportunities for volunteers. And
what would be some of those opportunities?
Some of the events they do, you can volunteer. To be a chamber ambassador. The events.
And what would that mean, to be a chamber ambassador?
You have to talk to Bruce Cosgrove, but the chamber ambassadors really welcome new businesses. They have ribbon cutting ceremonies. They welcome new businesses into town and let them know of the support groups and stuff. They're supporting services, not support groups. Some people like me need a support group, but yeah. So get to know the chamber and get on a committee. Get to know the town by immersing yourself in it, and I think once you do that, you take a little bit of ownership, and once you take a little bit of ownership, it means something more to you. Bob Snyder used to talk a lot about the pioneer spirit, and I say when you take that pioneer spirit and you give that pioneer spirit a sense of place, you create a village. And if you want to belong to the village, you get involved in the village, and once you're involved in the village, you'll be part of the village. You'll love the village, and the village will embrace you.
So once again, it's like this team concept.
Still kind of the team concept.
Goes back to that. Yeah. Become part of the team.
We are lucky in this town. We joke about it a lot in service clubs, and in high school there was always 10% of the people that got everything done. Auburn is lucky in that we have groups and groups of those 10% that all ended up in the same place. There are so many volunteers. Hard to find somebody in town that doesn't belong to some kind of a service club, that isn't giving back to the community, and that's what makes this place so special.
giving back.
Absolutely.
Can you talk more about giving back?
Well, I think for me that there's physiological stages of your life. There's natural stages in your late 40s and 50s where you want to make that contribution to society. So I think a lot of people it starts there. A lot of people it starts younger. But I think if you give of yourself and you're not doing it for the accolades, what you get back happens in here. And no one can take that away from you. And it's kind of like sports. You got that inner feeling, and whether you win, lose, or whatever, if you know you've done your best, and you know you've strived, and you know you've gone beyond what you could do, no one can take that away from you. And that's sort of the general attitude, I think, of this town. Paying it back.
When did that develop in you?
I think I had a little bit of it, throughout my life.
Before coming here?
But yeah, I think once I settled down, of course I had a son. Once I had my son, I think I started looking around and saying, what do I do? What do I do to make sure that this stays the great place that it is? My son may want to go off and experience the world someday.
Is he still here?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. He still lives with me. I was a late bloomer, so he's only 19. So.
Okay.
But what can we do to this town to where our children will go out into the world and at some point in time it'll be such a special place that they might want to come back. So I think that it just take care of your community. Look at the needs you have in the community. I've been involved in the Rotary Club. I'm on the advisory board of the Salvation Army. So, and those things, the reward is in here.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do for fun?
Let's see. Do I have any time for fun? Really. What I do in the community is a lot of my fun. I mean, I really enjoy the social aspect of being a councilman and actually getting out amongst the people, talking to them, and being their friend, listening to them about what's good and what's bad about the town. I have a Harley Davidson that I really like to ride.
Mm-hmm.
My significant other loves to ride.
What model do you have?
I have a Road King Classic, a 2008 Road King Classic. In fact, some of my cross-country friends from high school and I are riding to Reno to see street vibrations. So, used to play golf, play it once in a while now, but play a little golf. Like watching sports. But I would say, a lot of my hobby now is the community and my Rotary Club and my council activities.
Is that how we should define you? As really the community.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Because you really put a lot of effort and energy and your time into making this a better place.
It's I love this town. I think it's a great town.
Well, that's clear.
Yeah. And I mean, the community is really my greatest hobby.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience, the viewers at this particular point, either about Auburn involvement or the Krazy Man at this point?
I would just say that do what you can to get involved. If anyone wants to volunteer and help this effort, please get in touch with me.
So you could use some volunteers?
Always can use volunteers. If not this, then volunteer for something else. Immerse yourself in the community, and you will be rewarded. It might be in here, but you will be rewarded.
So are you going to host a team?
Am I going to host a team?
Yeah.
I'll watch them.
So you mean a spectator?
I'm sure we will have several teams from Auburn. I'm not sure which activity I'd really like to do anymore.
Well,
I'm more of the expert casual observer at this point, probably.
So in other words, you haven't been doing cross country running?
I do a lot. I walk a lot, but I haven't run in quite a while. So.
Well, depending upon the distance of that run.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Now he's challenging me. So
I'm just suggesting that's a possibility.
As of right now, I'm sure Auburn will have a lot of teams, and I'm sure that I'll be involved more in the event, and I'll be too involved in the event really to compete.
I see.
How's that? Does that work?
It's always next year, though, right? The year after?
Absolutely,
And, yeah, I mean, you don't want to close the door on that, do you?
Absolutely not. No.
I mean, what about your teammates from high school?
They're all runners.
They're all runners?
Well, and that's the other thing too. You know, there will be teams that are doing this just for fun, that aren't, you know, that aren't really out there to win, just see if they can do it and finish, and have a little fun along the way.
Good. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the program and enjoyed meeting and learning about Keith, and especially about the Krazy Man, and of course all the opportunities that you all have, those that live in and around Auburn. You don't have to, I mean, even if you're not an Auburn resident, you can still get involved in, in the activities here. So anyway, make sure Keith Nesbitt, and his email, I believe, is going to be on the screen, and he also gave his phone number. You could give the phone number one more time.
530-320-2325.
Great. So I'm glad you had a chance to come today, Keith, and it's been my pleasure, and learned a lot, and we'll certainly talk about the Krazy Man with a K.
Great. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for coming. Said Bill. But there was some